All right, we are ready and we are live.
Oh, beautiful.
Okay, everyone, welcome to our deep dive streams. And today we're exploring a very interesting topic: stress management and work-life balance. For those joining us the first time, deep dive streams are focused on helping entrepreneurs overcome their business challenges. Today, we've decided to dive a little deeper into our mental state and explore how we can support each other and our employees on this important issue. As always, we have our leading expert, Victor Nichols, with us, and we're thrilled to welcome an amazing guest, Pooja Desai, also known as Tia Bua. She is a mother, wife, philanthropist, and minority woman business owner. So, Pooja, please tell us a little about yourself and why mental health plays such a big role in your work.
Well, namaste and Ola, and thank you so much for having me join today. I'm super excited to be a part of this journey with you. Um, so, why is it important to me? And let me just start off by giving you a little information about who I am.
Absolutely.
So, I am Pooja Desai, and I am also known as Tia Bua, which is, basically auntie. Um, I am an author of a mental wellness children's book, which is Tia Bua Believes in Your Magic. And it all ties in. So not only am I a mom, but I have 27 years of, healthcare experience. I think the most important thing, and the most important takeaway and that I've learned and why it's important to me is in 2020, I think you know, understanding such a high suicide rate within healthcare, within teenagers, within children, it really pushed me to really think through on how we could be passionate about helping our employees because as there are employees, they're also parents, they're also children, they're taking care of their own sick parents. There's so many different your employee shows up, but that employee has so much going on at home as well. And I think, understanding and recognizing that is very important.
Yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what change have you seen for the past, not just 4 years since pandemic, but like throughout your career? How people are, why do you think people are focusing more on mental health at the workplace? And Vic, are also like throughout your career,
Mhm.
because you and Pooja, you work in different verticals. You're a business owner, and Pooja works more in corporate. And why do you think everything like is changing now, and why do you think people are paying more attention to mental health? Pooja, you can start.
Okay. So I think, 27 years of being in healthcare, one thing I can tell you is, living a lot of different lives in one lifestyle has taught me resilience. And working in a very intense environment such as healthcare teaches you that quickly. And I think we are at advantage in healthcare because we understand what employee burnout really looked like a long time ago. And I think the difference that I see now is that we are actually, you know, even though I think of mental wellness and health as we're behind the ball,
Mhm.
as a country, organizations, I really think in healthcare we've become forward thinking since 2020 specifically, and putting this at the forefront of recognizing that, you know, the happier an employee is, you have better engagement results, the happier your patients are going to be. And if we don't target and really work on helping the employee, then we're not helping the patients, we're not helping the community. So I think that difference that I've seen, and with the type of resources that we have now, has been an amazing change and a welcome change and a needed change.
And one of the
Absolutely.
things that I'm noticing too about some of the things that you're doing, Pooja, is the idea of starting young. You know, I think that's something that, it may be, I mean, obviously it makes sense to people, but I don't think they think of it as much as they should or could, or in a way that's going to help younger folks start to think about the whole mental health piece and how that's going to affect them then and there, because there's obviously, absolutely things that they need right then and there. And then as they start to move through the continuum, and why that's so important. So when they do get to this corporate situation, where they end up seeing people like me and other folks who are looking for work, that there has been some teaching there, and they're not just saying, oh my God, I don't know why I'm just finding out about this, or what, all of those pieces. So I think that that's starting early, and that's why I think what you're doing with your book and some of the other things are so amazing, because you're starting to get to kids and getting them to start thinking earlier.
I truly appreciate that, Vic. Honestly, it's so important. I think that's where, I laugh all the time and I say, we're folding like lawn chairs, really, when we are getting into these intense, corporate environments, or just even as, an entrepreneur, burnout is real, right? We know it's parental burnout, it's employee burnout, children are burning out, you know, the crisis is there. And what are we doing? And someone like, and I always say, knowing Vic and I and the team that we really are knowledge donors. We want to pay it forward in advance. Controlling your mindset is so important for these children, because they're dealing with adults. Some of these children are dealing with adult-like situations. And how are we teaching them to cope with that? We're not. We're catching up once they're already, going through the crisis. But what could we do to just teach them? This is not things that we're reinventing. These are generations. You hear people saying, take a breath, meditation, go take a walk. These are things that have existed. I didn't create it. Vic didn't create it. They were kind of like guidelines, but we ignore them.
Yeah.
And then when the children speak up, we ignore them because we're not hearing them, because you're a child. But it starts there, because if we're not helping them control their mindset when they're in school and they're in a situation where they're being bullied, or they are, an alone child, or, how are we helping them control their mindset to say, it's okay, you're safe here. And that is also what your employees feel, because those are children. The inner child is still there, right? I feel like my inner child's here, so I think it's important.
And it's how you channel that inner child, and if that inner child has actually had the opportunity to mature when you were a child, in the time period that was allotted to you, as growing up. And we've always heard, oh, they have to be, they become adults overnight and that kind of thing. Because I also think a lot of it is that children aren't allowed to be children like they used to be.
Right.
I know, I'll speak for my own self, growing up where I grew up and how I grew up, that I was not worried about whether or not I was going to be shot at school. I wasn't worried about whether or not the world problems were coming down on me, because every single thing I looked at, I still looked at war, and I looked at all of these other things, these adult things. And I didn't have to process that as a child. Okay. I didn't have to process that until I got old enough to understand what it actually meant, and then learned about it in school and through history and all of those other pieces. And I actually had a childhood. I went out and I played football, and I wanted to play baseball, and I wanted to learn my studies, you know what I mean, to do well in school. That's what I think a child should be focused on, so they're prepared, instead of all of these other things, which is the whole mental health part that you're talking about, which is so crucial. It's, to me, it's the crux of what's going on now and what's going to go on for the next 100 years.
Right.
This is a now to continuing forward. It's not just a now and then it's going to be a fad, and it's going to be like the pet rock or something. It's going to be something that's going to go on and on and on. So I think what you're doing is amazing. And I know, Deanna, you had some thoughts and some things, some questions that you wanted to kind of interject, so we could address them and talk through them. So, as you know, I can.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm wondering, first of all, how obviously everyone on some level has experiences stress, right? So I'm wondering how you deal with it. Let's say I know that Vic takes a lot of walks on a daily basis. Vic, what else do you do?
I meditate. I try to meditate twice a day. I was trained in TM, Transcendental Meditation. And the optimum obviously is 20 minutes twice a day, morning, night. Um, some days don't allow that, and some days don't allow the time. The actual morning's usually not as hard because you get up, you can do it, and you get on with your day. But nighttime sometimes is a little harder because we have these very busy lives. So if it's missed or whatever, or you're not going to make it, you can do it in the afternoon, whatever. I try to do it when I can, and there are days I don't. There's days I don't get to do it at night. I try to always do it in the morning, okay, because it's best for me, and the way they teach you is not to do it directly before you go to bed. So if I get home too late, I'm not going to do it at 1 o'clock in the morning. I'll wait until the following morning and then start the day that way. But believe me, the meditation has helped me, and I'm just going to give you a little snippet because you asked, Deanna. When I still had my business up in Florham Park, I remember there were people, and that was when I started doing TM, when I started doing transcendental meditation. I was trained it and I started doing it. It was the funniest thing because there were friends of mine and colleagues and said, Vic, I don't know what it is, but you're different. And even my partners mentioned to me things that used to make me crazy, like nuts. They're like, you seem to be a lot calmer. You seem to be a lot more focused. You seem to be, just a more easygoing than you. And that was attributed directly to this, TM, to the transcendental meditation. So I think that's one very important thing that I do along with the walking. And, I do try to get to the gym, a few times a week. I'm not crazy about it, but I'd rather get to the restaurant every night, every day than supposed to go to the gym. But, but that's kind of what I do.
Yeah, people also told me that I've changed when I started practicing meditations. But I feel like you just become more aware of the things that are happening, and you don't necessarily focus on the negativity. You just observe them, and you're like, okay, it's happening. I see that, and then you start to like act on that. But you don't put it through, and you don't go crazy, and you don't like put the negativity inside you. Like that's how I think meditation helps. Pooja, what about you?
No, I think, spot on. The both of you are very spot on. I do the same. I get up in the morning. I start off with an intense walk. It's all about pulling yourself out of darkness daily. And that's very important because, not, as Vic mentioned, having his previous lifestyle, not everyone was awarded the same. So it is very important to figure out how to channel some of that negative energy because we all have it, right? We can go for the dark or the light, positive or negative. So working out is very important to me. Eating right is very important to me, especially, in the nighttime, because that will trigger things and you don't sleep well. So sleep is very important. Drinking enough water and staying hydrated, super important.
Mm-hmm.
And meditating. I don't think I would be the human that I am today if I don't meditate, and I don't know if I would be if I would like who I am. Rather, forget
Mm-hmm.
everyone else. Would I like who I am? But we have that access, and that's the beauty of it, right? These tools and resources are available to us because it's us. We control it. We control our mindset. We control where we're going to go. Where we can't control the negative things happening, but we control how we show up. We control our energy
Mm-hmm.
and we control our boundaries. And that is super important in the workplace, having those boundaries, at home, having those boundaries, with your significant other, having boundaries, children, boundaries. You need boundaries, friends, anyone who needs your time and energy. You should show up, be a knowledge donor where you can, but balance and manage your energy, because that really is how you're going to help. You're not going to be able to change the world, but you can change your world by doing that.
I like that.
Absolutely.
There's a t-shirt in there somewhere.
Well, you know us as swag.
Yeah, well, Ali is saying that you're an inspiration, and she's thanking us for spreading awareness about mental health. And I also want to say, if for you guys, everyone who's watching this, if you have a story of experiencing mental health issues at a workplace, and you, or maybe in your personal life, and you want to share your story, please share in the comments, and we'll be happy to read it and to give you some advices if we can. I also want to talk about specifically mental health issues at the workplace, because I've read some statistics, and it's just mind-blowing. Like, it says that 68% of millennials and 81% of Gen Z employees leaving their jobs due to mental health reasons. Do you see that happening in your work, in your field?
I will say that I've seen a lot of change. And I don't think it's just specific to the younger generation. I think every generation has experienced change since this mental wellness crisis is really in the forefront. I think that the younger generation has dealt with a lot more where, not to date ourselves, but my generation, Vic's generation, we didn't have added pressure like social media.
No.
We were, yeah, right. We were able to go kick a ball and not worried about being recorded, right? We weren't, we learned how to go through a lot of, resilient situations together, because, we had community. Where with social media, I feel like you have isolation, and your community may not be the same community that we grew up in, meaning we felt very connected to other humans, and we didn't feel we had to do, we were there in our authentic self, right? And I think that's important, where with social media you have to have a certain presence. People, even when someone says to me, like, we see you're doing so many wonderful things, but you don't have a lot of followers on social media. And I say, but I'm doing a lot of wonderful things. I'm not looking at how many followers I have on social media, because I'm paying the knowledge forward, right? So I think
That's so true. So true.
those are the elements that I see impacting everyone. But Vic, what are you experiencing in your world?
Well, I mean, because I've really started to in the last couple of years, I do teach from time to time. I teach over at Rutgers Business School, and you talk about networking, to some of the undergrad. It's undergrad, it's not graduate, and talk about interpersonal relationships, networking, how to navigate within those interpersonal relationships, specifically because it's the business school, specifically as it relates to business, but it's exactly the same in personal relationships. Because they're all, whether you're trying to get a date or whether you know what I mean, or whether you're trying to get a raise, there are lots of the things that are exactly the same. And what I'm finding is that after I have these conversations, I give these talks, I try to make them immersive, and I try to make it so they're exchanges. It's not me talking at people, like, I know this and I know that. That's not helpful, and two, that just doesn't make sense to me. So I make them more dialogues, and where people can react with me. And then after the classes, here's the part that's really interesting. After the classes, people will come up to me, and they'll stand in line, to say, I'm getting ready to start this new job, or I'm getting ready. And they have these real problems that obviously I'm not a psychoanalyst or anything like that, but I know in many of those, a nugget of the problem that they have is psychological. It's something that either they didn't learn, they've suppressed, they've not been able, they haven't taught, they haven't learned it in their home, they haven't had the opportunity because of what you were saying, back to what you were saying as far as social media is concerned. The conversation through social media, in my world, is not a conversation. Okay. I equate that to the same thing as writing a letter was before there was internet
Right.
and things like that. It's not like being there in person. And it also promotes anonymity. You can do and say things in a social media platform and in a social media setting that you wouldn't have the balls to say to somebody's face. Okay.
Isn't that the truth?
Right?
You wouldn't do it in the workplace.
And that really has an impact on the building of relationships and interpersonal communication. Because
Right.
if you wouldn't say that in person, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you probably shouldn't say it online either.
Right.
You know?
Valid. It might cut down with some of that work, place stress that
Yeah.
you endure.
And then people form those cliques because it's obviously that's human nature. We're pack animals. So then they form these cliques, but they're forming these cliques in a virtual place, not in an actual place. So as I'm having these conversations, and just it so happens to be younger people because it's at a university, they're lost and they're asking questions that are they're good questions, but they're basic questions. And they're questions that I had answered when I was in junior high.
Right.
Okay. Or grammar.
Right. Right.
And I'm
Right.
like, oh my God.
Right.
And I answer them, and I don't ever let on that I think that they're a little late. I just answer the questions and help them get to where they need to go. But that's a lot of what I'm seeing. It's almost arrested development, Pooja.
Right.
It's arrested development.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. One of them, one person had asked me, and this wasn't after one of the classes. This is just after a conversation that I had overheard two guys talking. They were talking in a place I like to go, which is Starbucks, as you well know. I like my matchas. And there were two guys who were talking, and I was actually finishing up a call, and I was waiting for my drink, and they were talking about girls. They were talking about relationships. And they're like, I'm having such a problem meeting girls. And I guess they probably were in high school, like early high school. And I'm listening to this conversation, and I'm like, okay, I don't know whether or not I should say anything. Should I just be an observer, or should I kind of jump in here and say, hey guys, let's have a chat? Okay. And I said, guys, I couldn't help but overhear what you were saying. And you were talking about, having trouble meeting girls and trouble doing this and trouble doing that. I said, one, don't approach it as a task. Okay. Did anybody ever tell you shouldn't approach this as a task? It's not a job to meet women or other people. Don't make it a job. Whoever you are, wherever you are, at whatever place you are, do not make it a job. Approach a person, a woman, in this case it was a woman because they were talking about girls, approach her in a way that's not like you're afraid, okay, of what this interaction is going to be. You say, hey, let's talk. You can see that there's always something in common. If you're at school, you're in the same class. I said, in school, it's the easiest thing to do to talk to a woman or to a girl than it is out in the wild, because the one thing you have in common is you're both in school. They're in the same class. There's so many things to talk about when you're in school. So I started it was a brief conversation, and they're like, wow, man, you're right. We're overthinking this. I'm like, you got to where I wanted you to get to. Stop overthinking it. But nobody ever talked this through with them. Mom didn't, dad didn't. It probably would have been more of a dad than a mom. But nobody had this conversation with them. Either they assumed they already knew it, they assumed maybe they were getting it from somewhere else, or they didn't assume that somebody just was asleep at the switch and didn't assume that they needed it at all.
Valid. I think
it's a lightning conversation. Trust me.
Yeah. I think that, kind of stemming off of that, I would probably say, in bringing it to the workplace, probably don't want this in the workplace, but
Well,
but what I would probably say is you're right. And that might be something that, I think is a very big call out in organizations. And the reason why I say that is because that's onboarding as well, right? When you're hiring a new employee, you have to assume they would know nothing. Yes, their CV represents what they have done in their experience and what got them through the door. But now you're inviting them into your world, your organization, and it is up to you to set those guidelines and help them achieve and thrive, right? Grow and glow. That's my biggest term, grow and glow. And how do you do that? So to Vic's point, as he is, in a college setting, explaining this to, the younger generation, to not be afraid to actually go out there and introduce yourself and have that connectivity of the human connectivity. We live in a world of hybrid. We live in a world now where people are, working remotely anywhere. How
Yeah.
is that connectivity happening? And that really can be is crucial. Actually, it's a call to action, onboarding your employees and giving them those wellness resources during the onboarding process. Very crucial, because especially in the environments that they're working in, if it's a very intense environment, you want them to be able to take that deep breath. You want them to be able to meditate, take a walk. If you're constantly without a window in your office, then maybe get up and go outside, take your meetings outside, take your team outside, take them. If it's going to be a difficult conversation, that's a wellness tip. Take your team outdoors, have a lunch and learn out there. They have air, they have water, they have food. They're ready to hear what you're going to tell them, and they can retain it because they have those necessary items, and you're giving them that platform. And Vic gave, them a platform to be able to, execute on. And that's what we need to do, even in the world of, whether it's corporate, as an entrepreneur. I live totally different lives from, I always laugh and say it's like Hannah Montana, right? Like, this is my corporate world, and then this is my cartoon world. And in that cartoon world, I'm not afraid to be who I am. But in my corporate world, although I'm not afraid to be who I am now, because I stand in my power and I know what I bring to any table. And if a table isn't there, then I create multiple tables, because I am an entrepreneur. There is not one stream of income for people like Vic, myself, and you. Multiple streams. That's inherited since birth in my life, with my parents. So I think that's important. Those are really good tips to try to help your team along.
I want
What
to
are
work
the tips?
We knew that we were going to be talking today.
Yeah, what other tips would you give to business owners, entrepreneurs? Let's say we have all employees are remote. Like, what do you do in this situation? Because you still have to want to support them. Like, you can say like, oh, meditate once a day or take a walk, but it's just words. It doesn't become. They don't benefit of it if they don't take an action, right? But what would you do as an employer to not to force them, but like to maybe encourage them to do that?
So I think, living in that type of world, I would find there's so many online resources right now where, you can do a lot of team events together online. I wouldn't force them. I don't think that one thing I've learned in my life is forcing isn't going to get you to the point. It's encouraging and guiding and leading with kindness. People are more often going to follow leaders that they feel connected to, that they feel advocated for or with. So what I would do is probably, and I have done, you can have a meeting outdoors. So I already got them out of their house. Let's go take it outside. So now you have the same connectivity except for the human touch, right? Because we're not there, we're not shaking hands, we're not hugging. I'm a hugger. So we're not being able to do that, but you still got them in the element of hearing sound, hearing, being able to, have coffee together, or, a glass of water together, team building events that are geared towards being outdoors. There's ways that you can also meditate together. I think that's the important thing, right? Is me saying, Vic, go meditate. Growing up in my household, we were always told to meditate when we did something bad. Actually, We should have not done that. We should say,
Wow.
meditate daily, right? It's like, oh, they're not listening. The kids aren't listening. Just go meditate. No one's going to do
To
that.
like to relax
Yeah.
after and like process what you've done.
Yes. Process what you've done. You're on punishment. That's
Yeah,
your
you're
time
right.
out.
You're right. That's not necessarily the message you want.
Right? So what you want to do is guide them to that, right? Guided meditation is that too, right? You're guiding someone to a meditation, but you got to guide them to get to the meditation. And how do you do that? You be there. You as their leader. Hey, team event. This is what we're going to be doing. We're going to have a guided meditation today. I know it's going to take everyone some time. Practice it at home the day before. Get used to it. Look at some videos. Here's some clips. Here's how we're going to do it. And then you got that end result. Anything is possible in this world. The fact that we are all on this phone, this live stream together, shows anything is possible. Controlling that mindset and finding solutions to the problems. The problems are going to exist. They're here. They're not here to sit there and be afraid of you, but you shouldn't be afraid of them. And that's what you teach your employees, because that's what they're dealing with daily. Oh, this project's not being delivered on time. I have to go pick up my child. I have a child that's sick in a hospital. I have a mother that's sick in the hospital. I have to get this project done. Give them the grace. If you create an environment where people are not afraid to raise their hand and speak up, you're doing so much more than just being their boss. You are changing their lives. You're breaking cycles. You're changing lives of children. You are paying it forward just because you're doing it and you did it, and that person's going to be remembered. Someone like Vic is going to be remembered because he's helped change my life. And I know that. So I think those are important details when you think about who are you as a human first. Because I got to tell you, if I'm a boss, I am, right? I oversee, I wear a lot of different heels. So there's a lot, multiple businesses, right? Plus husbands' businesses, so family businesses. We have different, and in each setting, I'm a different role. And I know my role. Important for you to understand your role. Where your role starts is with you. And if you're not confident with who you are, then what are you bringing to the table? And if you're going to be disengaged, then if I walk in with an attitude, do I think that my nursing team is going to take care of patients? If I'm not in a great mood? Absolutely the hell not. They're going to look at me and say, oh my God, she's on one. And that is a domino effect.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
But if I show up every day and round and say, team, oh my God, we're about to pump out the highest volume we've ever pumped out. But you know what? We can do this. Make sure you're eating. Let me know. If you're not eating, let me get you some grapes. Let me make sure you have enough snacks at your desk. Keep it. The job needs to be done. But how the job gets done is up to the leader. And it's up to each individual person.
So true. As Marianne's saying that healthy communication and healthy, compassionate, strong leaders are the solutions. It's like exactly what you're saying. So have you seen the result? Like you haven't just started like from the beginning of your career implementing those things. I think it happened, during, sometime during the process. Have you seen the results? Like, have you seen this change of like going to or having a meeting outside or like constantly like reminding them to take care of themselves? Like, what change do you see in the work, in the progress?
Oh, it's gotten to the point where people will come to tell me I'm having a day, and then I help them figure out what day they're going to have after that. And that's a change. I see the change. I see the change in me. I see the change of when I show up. I now have been able to just be in the moment, which is very, very hard for a lot of people, right? Because they don't know how to stay there. They're in the past. They're living in regret. They're thinking about the future. Being in the moment alleviates so much stress, because in that moment, you get to show up as who you are. When I'm a mom, I'm a mom. I'm all in. I'm a soccer mom. I'm on that field. Let's go. When I'm an employee, I'm an employee. When I'm a leader at work and I'm their boss, I am all in. And being all in has been the difference, because being in the moment is helping you in the moment. And I think that change, what I've seen in my team, what I see in organizations, and how the push is here, that's wonderful. I think it's changing, and it's going to, people are tired of working for people who bring out the worst in them. And we're not talking about growth and, different opportunities. Listen, you are your opportunity. No one is creating that table for you. No one.
That's so true.
It is.
There's one point I want to add to this, because it's something that sometimes the quote unquote leader doesn't necessarily say, which is, we're teaching, we try to teach, and we facilitate, and we support, and we listen, and all those other things, but we're also learning at the same time. And I think one of the things that makes it so exciting for me, with the team that I work with and the clients that I work with, my partner and everything else, I learn from them all the time. Even if I am helping them or us solve a problem, I'm learning from them, because they may have a different perspective on the problem. They may have a different feeling on the problem. And we then start to come to that, consensus of how we're going to solve that, whatever the XYZ problem. That doesn't, it's the process. It's the process that I'm talking about. And I think leaders don't necessarily say, they're always talking about, like when you listen to all of them, major CEOs of corporations and all of those things, they're always talking about what they've been able to do, or how they've been able to help, and how they've aligned their teams and everything else. But they're not telling about the stuff that they're learning from their teams, and the things that they're learning from those individuals that they're quote unquote helping. And I think that that's something that has to be, verbalized, because there's a value proposition in leading someone or a team, of what they're teaching you. Okay.
That is so spot on.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're already at a disadvantage.
Absolutely.
Hiring the team and not empowering them, delegating to them, and trusting them to act on it is a huge problem.
Huge.
I am a knowledge donor, right? So I think that is super important to understand who you are as an individual. I am not in fear of if someone could do my job better than I can. I welcome that. What can I do to improve who I am daily? That is growing and glowing. That is an everyday opportunity that you will miss if you're not listening to what other people have to say.
Amen.
Because your way is not the way. And if there's a better way to make something operationalized, then you'd be foolish not to listen.
Oh,
And then
totally.
giving the credit to the people that are actually doing the work. Super important. You really need to understand who your audience is in every environment that you are in. And that was something that a mentor and an old boss has taught me. And it was something I failed at. And I didn't know. And I was about to walk into a meeting without knowing who I was going to meet. I didn't take out the time to do the research. And he looked at me, and I'll never forget. He said to me, he said, "Do you know who you're meeting in there?" And I said, "No, you want to get me up to speed?" He said, "No, you have 10 minutes to get up to speed. Next time, know your audience." And I was like, "Can I phone a friend?" And I phoned his boss, who was also my boss. And I phoned her and I said, "I have 10 minutes." And I gave a presentation after that, because I knew, first of all, I retained it so fast. Let me tell you, Cliff Notes at all-time best. And then the valuable lesson is know your audience, know who you are teaching what to, and know what you can get out of your team members. I'm not hiring a doctor, and I say this, and even if I took myself out of the environment I'm in, I will go to a brain surgeon for brain surgery. I am not going to go to a hip doctor for brain surgery. Not to say that they don't know what they're doing, but they specialize in that. I'd be foolish to think that either one of them would do a better job performing surgery on the other body part that I have no interest of trying to even figure out, because I don't want to be the guinea pig for that. So why I say that is, I don't look at my team members as this one's more educated, or oh my God, this one isn't. Or even in the world of being an entrepreneur, everybody on my team, my illustrator brings illustrations. She's my niece. She's 16. I'm expecting for her to give me and deliver what a 16-year-old would do. If someone judged my art in a book and said, this is, it's not an art of a 40-year-old, I would turn around and say, that's raw art. And she's learning every day, and I'm learning from her every day. Right. So I'm not going to expect for her to perform the same way as the editor. That's the reason why we have an editor.
Right.
Right.
That's not her job.
So, but I will teach the elements of knowing everyone. As a leader, you should know everyone's job. I'm not saying to go do it. Right. But if
You
your
have to know
team
it. You
comes to
definitely
you,
you have to know it for
you
sure.
need to know it. How are you going to advocate for them? If you don't have a heartbeat on what's happening in your world, again, you're at a disadvantage. Shame on you. Do better.
Yeah, and that's part of your responsibility is to know that. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it's something that I think a lot of people skip over. They're like, okay, I'm a leader, I'm the head person or whatever it might be, but they don't really even understand the jobs that the other folks do. They, like you said, they don't have to do them, and they certainly don't have to be better than the person
No,
who
absolutely
is
not.
doing that job. But you need to understand the job in order to be able to have an educated conversation or to lead. You can't just not know. I remember a prime example was when I had my printing business way back when I was in school, and I was working during the summertime, and I started working at a print shop, right? Running printing presses, which I hated, by the way, but I was very good at it. The owner of the shop, he was always buttoned up, and he wore, beautiful tie and everything. Okay, he's in the printing business now. It's way back when. Little tiny place. He had 2 press operators, me and one other guy. And he was always buttoned up and everything. And he was out there just selling and everything like that. But this guy had no idea how to run a printing press. Like, no idea how to run a printing press. So one time the other guy was out and I was in there, and we had all this work to do. And I said, well, you come on back here and run this other press with me, and I'll run these 2 other presses at the same time, and we'll get this stuff out. He looked at me like I had 14 heads and said, I don't know how to run a printing press. I said, well, wait a minute, bro. You own a printing company and you can't run a printing press, and you only got 2 employees? You got to be kidding me. So, the fact that he didn't even know how to run one was unfathomable to me, and that was when it clicked in my head. I'm like, you really do need to know how to do, especially when you're a small entrepreneur. If you're working for Microsoft, there's always somebody else who can do the job. But I mean, if you are working for a small entity, you really do have to understand that. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is something that I learned. I was like, whoa, bro, you're in trouble.
No, you have to be accountable, right? You're accountable for yourself first.
Yeah.
And then you're accountable for everyone that's in your charge, whether as a parent, whether as an entrepreneur. And understanding those differences really is going to help make you a better leader, right? Because that's what you want to be. And if you're not open to feedback, you're at a disadvantage. Because once you know better, you do better.
Mm-hmm.
And that should be the accountability. And that's also up to us to encourage that accountability exists. You can't control the environment. You can't control the workload. But what you can control is how you show up there.
Mm-hmm.
And, what you check at the door. In 2020, my world was falling apart. I had to show up every day, and I had to support my team. I had to show up at home and support my team here too. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to recognize that, being in that moment, how we spoke about, and being in that role, whatever that role is for you for that day, recognizing that that's all you can contribute, right? I can't change Vic's mind about how he approaches work. The outside environments that may be controlling, we can't even control and say, hey, go change your mindset. No one's going to do that. But giving those tools and resources up front, creating that environment where people trusting you to make the right decision for the organization you work in. Because at the end of the day, the organization is what you're representing.
Yeah.
And you need to represent that no matter where you are. You need to understand what your policies and procedures are, because that's also added stress. If you didn't know something, if you weren't taught something, then you're scared. And now you're scared to raise your hand and say, messed up here. All of us mess up. I messed up, but how many times misspelling a word and putting it out there? Do I look at myself like, oh my God, I just posted that? No, I delete it. I cry about it for 1 second. And I move on.
About for 1 second.
And I move on. Because what am I going to do? Did someone die? No, no,
Nope.
nope.
All you need to do is chalk it up and say, hey, I'll do better next time and move on.
Right? Lesson learned.
Yep. And move on.
I learned today.
And that's
Yeah.
it. I something I want to make sure that we bring up is because you are such an amazing person, Pooja. I want you to tell a little bit, if you would, because I know we only have about 15 minutes left. I want you to tell a little bit about how you decided to write your book and what brought you to that. If you wouldn't mind sharing that.
Oh, yes. No, I definitely will. So, as I mentioned during 2020, I think this book was being written in my mind for a very long time. It was a family recipe, so to speak, of how to be. I've often been a catalyst for change almost, right? So, breaking traditional generational, you know, curses or gaps, as I say, or expectations, started at a very young time. And inclusion started at a very young time for me. So I think during 2020, what really pushed me is being in the healthcare world and then not being able to be connected to my daughter, who went through a lot of health issues from long COVID. And we almost lost her about 15 times because we couldn't figure it out. And the world was trying to catch up, right? Nobody knew. The new symptoms were being added, and we're all trying to stay sane. I started writing, and I realized that it became an outlet for me. And back then, it's funny how you manifest your own life, and it just turns out different ways. Because I used to always say I wanted to write for Hallmark because I'm a big cheesy, cornball, so to speak. But in turn, it's in reels and books. But I will say that that was my inspiration. And then being in a hospital setting where I couldn't even be near her, or because she was above the age of 18, I couldn't stay with her, but not knowing what resources I never provided to her on how to control her mindset in these environments. And then we started meditating together, and I would kind of like do a Zoom very similar to this, and gather all my nieces and my nephews together, whoever would join, and we would do you know some story time. And then my niece Aliana said to me, Tia Bua, because Tia means aunt in Spanish, Bua means aunt in Hindi, and we're like the UN. She said, why aren't you doing this in real life? And then, I opened it up to all the nieces, nephews, whoever wanted to, let's make it a family thing, whoever wants to draw. And she drew me, and I took her first piece of art because it said, we are going to grow and glow together in time, and it'll be what it's going to be. And she really was able to, bring me to life in a cartoon figure, which I just totally love. So shout out to Aliana and my editor Maya and my whole team, V and Kai, my little expert, in telling me what isn't going to work for children. But I think that's what really led me there. And this book has done so many amazing things. I'm in pre-surgical packets throughout tri-state areas and, other states. I'm in Read Across America. I helped a school district go from detention to a calm room because, again, we're punitive. We give you punishment for acting out, but we really don't know why you're acting out, what's happening at home. How could we help you? How can we control? I've started activity sheets for children just to be able to, coloring is, something big. It's, the next book is coming out 11/11. Tia Bua celebrates being mixed, blended, colored, and loved. Very timely. Didn't even, realize what's going to be happening in the world today. But, that's diversity and inclusion at a family setting.
Mhm.
How to accept people into your home from, because if you target it at home first, then they become your future leaders, right? So you're welcome. I'm trying to help raise the future generation of the workforce.
Yeah.
by doing some of this stuff. But it's been amazing. It's been passion and purpose aligning, and it's kind of, I don't know where it's going to go, and I'm just happy where it is. So,
And isn't the journey the most important part, not the destination? I mean, where it's going to go is where you're going to take it, but that's the fun part,
yes, and we're just getting started.
because I mean, I know it's happened to you. I'm sure it's happened to Deanna, and I'm sure it's happened to anybody who's listening here, is that we'll set a goal, whatever that goal is, and you get to that goal and you're like, you know what? This wasn't nearly as rewarding as I thought it was going to be. So what do? You set another goal.
Right.
Okay. Because the part you were really enjoying was the journey.
Right. And then what is your goal, right? For
Right.
me, for this, my goal is to be a knowledge donor, pay it forward anywhere possible, whether it's in my corporate environment, in my cartoon environment, in my storytelling environment. And that's the goal. So will you ever reach your goal? No.
I hope not.
You're learning and you're
Right.
donating every day.
I hope not. I didn't really embrace that until significantly later in my life, where I got to a point where I actually achieved, at least in my mind anyway, some of the goals that I had set out to achieve. And I'm like, oh my God, there's so much more here. All right.
Yeah.
I got to move the goalpost, man. This is going to be the world's longest football field because I'm going to keep moving the goalpost, because I'm having too much fun doing it and learning along the way. So that's something that I wanted to say during this conversation, because I think it's so important that it's not about so much being goal oriented, especially when you're talking about the long game, like your career and your life and your relationships and things like that. There are certain things that have to be done in a timely fashion. I mean, you got to get from point A to point B, and you want to do that. That's different. I'm talking about the bigger things in life, the bigger goals in life, that the journey is so much more rewarding than the actual getting there.
It really is. I got to tell you, the amazing people that I've worked with so far, including you guys. The opportunities, to see a child that's dying in a hospital say, I believe in my magic, knowing that there's nothing more for them. This is it.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah.
This is it. And being a part of that, whether it's for 5 seconds, my goal, my true goal is to empower people, whether you meet for a second or a lifetime, and recognizing that they're empowering me. They're sharing their journey with me, right?
You now have become part of that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How lucky am I? And how lucky are they to even have that from me as well? So I think that is true, Vic. It's the journey. And it's the journey with your employees, your family,
everybody.
everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Gee, I think you might
as Diana is saying, living life with a purpose is truly rewarding.
It is.
It really is. Diana's spot on. She's smart.
True. Was there? I know we only have a few minutes left.
Yeah, I want to kind of like finish up with a few questions for each of you guys.
Okay.
Well, Vic, as networking and communication specialist, communication expert, I would say, what do you do? Like, how do you talk to your employees in a situation when they have a burnout, when they experience mental health issues, but you know that the work has to be still done? How do you encourage your employees?
First of all, no employees, because I don't look at people that way.
Colleagues?
We're a team member, because for me, that nomenclature is a problem, only because you're not working for me, you're working for us. Okay. If you're working for me, there's a disconnect. Okay. You're not working for me. We're working for us. And if you want to have that kind of hierarchy, you need to find another environment. I don't look at anybody I work with as an employee, no matter what.
Yeah.
Partner down to whoever it might be. We're all a team. The first thing I would think, which I think is the most important thing, is the ability to listen. Okay. so many people, and we men have a bigger problem with this than women in relationships. And no, I'm serious. It's a heart attack. We want to solve problems immediately because we're wired that way, but we don't listen. Okay. So you're telling me something and I'm already in my head. Well, here's what I would do. And here's what I would do. And here's how I'd solve that. And here's what, no, shut up. Listen to what the person has to say. Listen to it completely. Then ask them what they think the solution might be. Okay. So now they're starting to think about their own problem instead of coming to me and saying, yo, Vic, solve this for me. Okay. That's not helpful for them. And it's, as someone who's in a leadership position, that's not terribly helpful for me either. Because if you don't understand the solving of this particular problem and you can't be part of the solution, you're going to come to me again with the same problem. And that is a problem. Okay. I do not want to address the same problem more than once. So it has to be, take the time out, put the brakes on and listen.
Yeah.
Okay. Listen to what that person's saying and say, okay, well then facilitate before you solve. And that's been I've done that throughout my entire life. Partially it's intuitive and partially it's because it's the way my mother was. Okay. My mom was extremely intelligent, extremely insightful. And she's the kind of woman who would get you to do something and something you absolutely didn't want to do. And you did it. And after it was done, you're like, holy shit, how did she get me to do that? I was not going to do that. Okay. Because she listened and then she facilitated and got you to the point where you're like, you know what? That is a good idea. I'm going to do that. And then you do it. How did she do that? And she was always very calm, never yelling, screaming, none of that. Just chill. Father, a little different tact. So I think I learned that as a part of how I was brought up. But the listening piece is so crucial because if a person doesn't feel like they're being heard, you can't solve their problem. You can't solve the problem. So that's the short form. There's a lot more to that, but we only have 4 minutes left.
Well, okay. Pooja, Tracy is saying that you're a beautiful spark of life. And there are a lot of people commenting that, encouraging you to keep doing what you're doing because you're an inspiration and you're having a huge impact on everybody's life. So, like, if you were, a few words for those who are in mental health crisis or who are experiencing some issues, or whatever you want to say, if it's motivational, inspirational, or maybe you have a few tips, or you have the time.
Yes. First of all, thank you so much to everyone. I mean, the inspiration comes from all of you because, as Vic said, you have to listen, and listening is very important. I think that, having the only advice that I could give to you is it really does fall on you to help you, to stand in your own power, to fix you, to help guide you, to help grow you. And the accountability is you. And I pull myself out of darkness daily from things that I've had to go through at a young age, and being able to now be a resource and share some of these experiences and really help people wherever I can is really, I'm super passionate about it, and I'm not going to stop. But I think the biggest takeaway is that if you recognize that you control not what's happening to you, but your mindset, you will realize just by taking a breath, taking yourself out of those elements, taking yourself out of those horrible situations, you are protecting you. No one's coming to save you. We can only guide you.
That is so true.
That was beautiful.
Thank you, friend, as are all of you. And I'm so excited. This was so much fun. Again, passion, right? This is a journey.
Yeah, well, hey, Pooja, we're going to call this Series 1.
Yay! I'll be back with my little magic wand. That's a happy dust everywhere.
No, that's our first season, first episode. That's
It is lovely. Thank you for the opportunity, for the friendship, for the journey. This is amazing. The support.
And there'll be
Kindness
lots
is
more
a
of that.
movement.
Yeah, thank you everyone who was commenting and engaging with us today. Marianne, Elia, Tracy, Diana, and everyone who is watching our show. And there are more are coming. So please join us on other streams. We'll be happy to talk to you. And if you have any ideas for future shows, if there are any topics you want to talk about or share your experiences, please DM me or DM Vic. And we'll talk again very soon.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thanks again, Pooja. Thanks, Diana.
Thank you.
Okay.
Uh-huh.